I still remember the excitement and trepidation that filled our group of friends as we arrived at Unit 522, deep in the heart of the woods. We had all heard the whispers about the unit's dark past, the rumors of unexplained occurrences and paranormal activity that seemed to follow anyone who dared to venture near. Despite the warnings, we were drawn to the mystery like moths to a flame. Our group consisted of seasoned campers, each with their own reasons for being there. There was Alex, a thrill seeker always on the lookout for the next adrenaline rush. Emily, a skeptic who saw Unit 522 as nothing more than a place for urban legends and ghost stories. Jake, a history buff with an affinity for the unit's troubled past. And me, Sarah, a believer in the supernatural, eager to experience it firsthand. As we set up our campsite, we gathered around the fire, sharing tales of Unit 522's dark history. There was the story of Dr. Lee, who had been conducting inhumane experiments on prisoners at the unit, claiming that he was trying to unlock the secrets of the human mind. Then there was the legend of the echoes, whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the unit, warning of impending doom and despair. As night began to fall, we huddled around the fire, listening to each other's stories, our imaginations running wild with possibilities. But as the darkness closed in, a creeping sense of unease settled over us. It started with small things, a twig snapping in the distance, a bird chirping too loudly, a faint rustling in the underbrush. We tried to brush it off as mere paranoia, but the feeling persisted. The woods seemed to be watching us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being herded toward some unknown fate. As we ventured deeper into the woods, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the trees, we stumbled upon something that would forever alter our perception of Unit 522. It was as if the forest itself had revealed a dark secret to us. The trunks of the trees were adorned with strange symbols, etched into the bark in a crude yet disturbing manner. They seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, as if they were alive and watching us. We exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to make of this discovery. Emily pulled out her phone, snapping photos of the symbols, hoping to document evidence for our investigation. Jake began to transcribe them into his notebook, trying to decipher any hidden meaning behind their cryptic message. Meanwhile, Alex and I wandered away from the group, drawn by an inexplicable force to a nearby clearing. As we approached, I noticed something that made my blood run cold, a series of messages scrawled on the walls of an abandoned building, seemingly left by some long-forgotten occupant. The words were scribbled in hasty handwriting, with no discernible pattern or rhyme. They spoke of madness and despair, of a presence that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. As I read the words aloud to Alex, our hearts racing with anticipation and fear, we stumbled upon an old audio recorder hidden amongst the debris. It was still functional, and as soon as we pressed play, the silence was shattered by the haunting sound of children's laughter, their giggles echoing through the empty halls like a chilling requiem. The recording seemed to go on forever, each laugh growing louder and more maniacal before finally fading into an unsettling silence. We stood there, frozen in terror, as if we had disturbed something that was better left unspoken. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the fire once more, our minds racing with questions about Unit 522's dark past. We had spent hours poring over dusty tomes in the campsite's library, uncovering tales of inhumane experiments conducted by Dr. Lee and his team. The stories spoke of patients subjected to gruesome procedures, their screams and pleas for mercy echoing through the unit's corridors. We also heard whispers of supernatural occurrences, ghostly apparitions, disembodied voices, and unexplained noises that seemed to emanate from nowhere. As the night wore on, our suspicions grew. Something was indeed amiss at Unit 522. Alex pulled out his laptop, connecting it to the internet as we delved deeper into the unit's history. We stumbled upon a forum dedicated to the unit, where former employees and patients shared their own tales of terror. The stories were chilling, with many claiming to have experienced strange occurrences while working or living at the unit. Emily pulled out her notebook, jotting down notes as I helped Jake set up our equipment. We had brought all manner of gear, cameras, audio recorders, EMF meters, and more in preparation for a long night of investigation. As the last rays of sunlight faded, we began to assemble the equipment, our hearts racing with anticipation. The darkness seemed to press in around us, making our task feel like a mission into the unknown. We worked in silence, our only sound the soft hum of equipment and the occasional rustle of leaves outside. Finally, as the clock struck midnight, we stood back to survey our setup. Our cameras were angled towards the unit's entrance, while audio recorders were placed throughout the corridors. EMF meters sat on either side of the door, ready to detect any unusual fluctuations in the electromagnetic field. We exchanged a nervous glance. We were about to spend the night inside Unit 522, and there was no turning back now. As we settled into our positions for the long night ahead, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The woods seemed to be watching us, the trees looming above like sentinels. We tried to focus on our equipment, but it was no use. My eyes kept drifting towards the darkness beyond the ring of light cast by our cameras. It started with small things, a faint whisper in the wind, a shadow darting across the edge of our vision. Emily swore she saw a figure lurking just beyond the tree line, only to vanish when she turned to look again. Alex began to feel an intense sense of unease, as if something was closing in around us. We tried to rationalize these events, telling ourselves it was just our imagination playing tricks on us. But as the night wore on, the occurrences grew more frequent and more intense. I started to see strange visions, flashes of images that didn't belong to me. A child's face stared back at me from the darkness, its eyes black as coal. I spun around, expecting to see someone standing behind me, but there was no one there. The voices began too, a cacophony of whispers and screams that seemed to come from all directions at once. We tried to communicate with each other, but our words were lost in the din. And then, just as we thought things couldn't get any worse, Jake went missing. He had wandered off to investigate a strange noise, and now he was gone. We frantically searched the woods, calling out his name until our voices were hoarse, but there was no response. All that remained was a cryptic message scrawled on the trunk of a nearby tree, "They're waiting for us." I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the words, knowing that we had finally crossed into the realm of the unknown. As we frantically searched for Jake, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the trees, we stumbled upon a disturbing sight. A symbol, similar to the ones etched into the tree where Emily had found the cryptic message, was scrawled across the trunk of another tree. The image seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching us. We pressed on, our hearts racing with fear, but every step felt like we were walking further into a nightmare. As the night wore on, the signs and symbols grew more frequent, each one more disturbing than the last. It was as if something was trying to tell us something, but what? We began to suspect that we weren't alone in the woods. Every snap of a twig or hoot of an owl made us jump, our senses on high alert. Our sanity started to fray, and terrors intensified. Emily became convinced that the symbol was a warning, a message from some unknown entity telling us to leave while we still could. But I knew Jake wouldn't have gone without us. not now that he had found something important. We were all starting to turn on each other, our arguments and suspicions reaching a boiling point. Alex accused me of being paranoid, of seeing things that weren't there. Emily whispered that she saw Jake's ghostly figure lurking just beyond the tree line, watching us with cold, dead eyes. I knew it was true. We had seen him walk away from us, his eyes fixed on some unknown destination. As the night wore on, our grip on reality began to slip. We stumbled over each other, our flashlights casting wild arcs of light across the darkness. And then, just when we thought things couldn't get any worse, I saw it, a figure, standing just beyond the edge of the campsite, its eyes fixed on me with an unspeakable malevolence. As we ventured deeper into the abandoned building, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls, I stumbled upon a hidden journal belonging to Emily. Her handwriting was shaky and erratic, as if she had been scribbling down her thoughts in a state of utter desperation. The entries began innocently enough notes about strange noises and movements in the building, but quickly escalated into full-blown terror. It seemed that Emily had made contact with an otherworldly presence, one that had driven her to madness. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read through the journal, my eyes scanning the pages for any sign of what was happening. And then I saw it, a single sentence that made my blood run cold. "I've been consumed," she had written, "and now they're coming for us." As I finished reading the last entry, the lights in our equipment flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. The supernatural occurrences began to escalate, the whispers growing louder and more urgent. It was as if whatever was out there was feeding off our fear, growing stronger with every passing moment. We tried to huddle together for comfort, but even that seemed futile. The presence seemed to be closing in on us from all sides. I could feel its eyes upon me, boring into my skin like hot coals. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything went silent. The darkness was oppressive, heavy with an unspoken malevolence. I knew we had to get out of there fast, but as we turned to make our way back to the campsite, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Emily was gone. She had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a faint scent of smoke and decay. We frantically called her name, but there was no response. It was as if she had been erased from existence. And then, just as we were starting to lose hope, I heard it, a low, rasping voice that seemed to be speaking directly to me. "You'll never leave this place," it hissed. "You'll never escape." The voice grew louder, more urgent, and I knew that we were running out of time. We had to find Emily, no matter what it took. But as we stumbled through the darkness, the presence seemed to be growing stronger, its power threatening to consume us whole. As we delved deeper into the abandoned building, I stumbled upon a dusty old archive room. The shelves were lined with ancient files, each one bearing a name that sent shivers down my spine. I began to sift through the documents, searching for any mention of Emily or our situation. And then I found it, a file labeled Project Elysium. As I opened the folder, a chill ran down my spine. The contents were a revelation, a series of experiments conducted on individuals who had been deemed unfit by society. They had been subjected to psychological conditioning, designed to break their minds and remake them in the image of the experimenters. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized that we had stumbled into something far more sinister than we could have ever imagined. The group's grip on reality began to slip, and we started to experience hallucinations. We saw things that weren't there, shadowy figures lurking in the corners, disembodied voices whispering in our ears. Our sense of time became distorted, and we lost track of hours, even days. Alex became convinced that he was being pursued by a monstrous creature, while Emily insisted that she had seen her own death. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were trapped in some kind of twisted nightmare, with no escape in sight. As the terrors escalated, our behavior became more erratic. We lashed out at each other, accusing one another of being part of the experiment. The presence seemed to be feeding off our fear, growing stronger with every passing moment. I knew that we had to find a way to break free from its grasp, but my own mind was a jumble of contradictions. Was I still sane, or was I just playing into the hands of the unknown? As the darkness closed in around us, I realized that our survival depended on more than just escaping the building. It depended on finding a way to confront our deepest fears and restore our grip on reality. But as we stumbled through the labyrinthine corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being led deeper into the heart of madness itself. We fled into the woods, desperate to escape the clutches of whatever horror had taken hold of our group. The darkness seemed to swallow us whole, as if the very forest itself was determined to consume us all. Every step felt like a betrayal, as if we were being led deeper into the heart of madness by some unseen force. The trees loomed above us, their branches creaking ominously in the wind. I could feel eyes upon me, boring into my skin like hot coals. Alex stumbled ahead, his flashlight casting wild arcs of light across the underbrush. Emily followed close behind, her eyes fixed on some point in front of us with a desperate intensity. And then there was me, lost in my own thoughts, struggling to keep up with the pace of the others. The forest seemed to be shifting around us, like a living thing that didn't want us here. We stumbled over roots and fallen branches, our footsteps echoing through the stillness. And then we saw it, a mangled body, torn flesh and broken bones scattered across the ground. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized that this was what had happened to Emily's friend, Sarah. The realization hit us like a ton of bricks. We were not alone in these woods. There were others who had come before us, and they hadn't made it out alive. We quickened our pace, desperate to put as much distance between ourselves and the carnage behind us. But no matter how fast we ran, I could feel the forest's gaze upon me, weighing me down with its malevolent presence. The trees seemed to be closing in around us, their branches tangling together above our heads like skeletal fingers. And then we saw it, a sign of brutal violence, scrawled across a tree trunk in blood-red letters. "They're coming for you." I felt a scream building in my throat as the group's grip on reality began to slip further apart. We were being hunted, and there was no escape from the forest's deadly grasp. I was the only one left standing. The screams echoed through the woods, a chilling reminder of what had happened to my friends. I stumbled forward, desperate to escape the forest's deadly grasp. Every step felt like a betrayal, as if the very trees themselves were conspiring against me. I could feel eyes upon me, boring into my skin like hot coals. The presence seemed to be closing in around me, its power suffocating me with an unspeakable horror. I knew then that I had to find a way out, or risk joining the ranks of the dead. I pushed through the underbrush, my heart pounding in my chest, and then I saw it, a hidden door, camouflaged to blend seamlessly into the surrounding foliage. It was as if fate itself had led me to this moment. I stumbled forward, my hand reaching out to grasp the door's rusty handle. As I pushed it open, a wave of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The room beyond was dimly lit, with rows of ancient computer screens and dusty file cabinets lining the walls. And in the center of the room, a single chair sat atop a raised dais, surrounded by a halo of flickering fluorescent lights. It was then that I saw the evidence files labeled Subject 17, detailing the brutal experiments conducted on the group. The presence had been born from this place, a monstrous creation forged in the depths of human depravity. And now it was coming for me. I knew then that I had to act fast or risk being consumed by the very horror that had driven my friends to their deaths. I frantically scoured the room, searching for any clue that might lead me to safety. But as I reached for a file labeled Escape Protocol, the lights flickered and died. The darkness was absolute, a living thing that wrapped around me like a shroud. And then I heard it, the sound of footsteps, echoing through the room like a death knell. It was coming for me now. I knew then that my time was running out. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed the file and made a run for the door. But as I stumbled forward, the presence loomed behind me, its eyes burning with an unspeakable horror. And in that moment, I knew that I would never escape. The last remnants of light faded from my eyes, plunging me into an eternal darkness. I was no longer investigating a mysterious unit. I was the latest victim of its sinister forces. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer, shattering the fragile hold on reality that had kept me sane for so long. My mind reeled as I stumbled through the twisted corridors, desperate to escape the abyss of madness that seemed to be closing in around me. But it was too late. The darkness within myself had been awakened, and it was consuming me whole. Memories long buried rose to the surface, twisted and distorted by the horrors I'd experienced. I saw my friends, their faces contorted in terror as they succumbed to the same forces that now threatened to consume me. I felt their screams echoing through my mind, a cacophony of despair that seemed to come from all directions at once. The presence loomed over me, its eyes blazing with an otherworldly intelligence as it watched me unravel thread by thread. I was no longer in control. The darkness had taken hold, and I was powerless to stop it. My thoughts grew increasingly disjointed, my grip on reality tenuous at best. The world around me melted away, leaving only the cold, dark certainty of Unit 522's abyssal madness. And in that moment, I knew I was forever trapped here, a prisoner of my own sanity. The last rays of sunlight faded to black, and I was left alone in the darkness, lost forever in the twisted labyrinth of my own mind. The next morning, authorities found the abandoned car, still running, with no sign of the group. The woods were quiet once more, but the legend of Unit 522 lived on, a testament to the horrors that lurked within. In the years since, strange occurrences had been reported in the area, whispers of an otherworldly presence, ghostly apparitions, and unexplained noises in the dead of night. The darkness within Unit 522 remained, waiting to consume its next victim. As the seasons passed, the forest grew quiet once more, but the memories of that fateful night lingered, etched into the minds of those who dared to venture near. Some said they saw shadowy figures darting between the trees, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Others claimed to have heard whispers in the wind, tempting them deeper into the woods. And then there were those who swore they had seen the ghostly apparitions of the group's final moments, frozen in time, trapped forever in Unit 522's abyssal madness. The legend grew, a cautionary tale told around campfires and in hushed whispers. But for those who knew the truth, Unit 522 was more than just a place. It was a doorway to the very fabric of madness itself. And so, they stayed away, fearful of what might lurk within its shadows. For in the darkness that lay at the heart of Unit 522, there was no escape from the horrors that dwelled within. The woods remained quiet, but the legend lived on, a testament to the unspeakable terrors that waited patiently for their next victim. As I sit here, reflecting on that fateful night, I realize that some secrets are better left unexplored. The memories still haunt me, a constant reminder of the terrors that lurk in the shadows. The darkness within Unit 522 remains, an eternal abyss of madness, waiting to consume its next victim. And as I write these words, I wonder, am I already trapped? The pen scratches against the paper, a futile attempt to exorcise the demons that haunt me. But they won't be silenced. They'll always be here, lurking in the recesses of my mind, waiting to pounce. I'm not sure how much longer I can hold on. The lines between reality and madness are blurring, and I'm not sure which side I'm on anymore. Is this writing a form of therapy, or is it a desperate attempt to trap myself in a world of my own making? I don't know. All I know is that the darkness within Unit 522 has consumed me, and I'm just along for the ride. The words flow onto the page, a torrent of emotions and fears and anxieties. But are they mine, or are they something else's? Something that lurks in the shadows, waiting to consume me whole. I don't know anymore. All I know is that I'm writing this, and the darkness is responding. It's whispering back at me, a cold, calculating voice that promises me nothing but despair. And yet I continue to write, driven by a morbid curiosity about what lies beyond the veil of sanity. Is it possible that I've crossed over, that I've entered a world where the laws of reality no longer apply? Or is this just my mind playing tricks on me? I don't know. All I know is that I'm trapped in this abyss, and I'm not sure how to escape. The darkness closes in around me, a suffocating shroud that threatens to consume me whole. And as I write these words, I wonder, am I already gone?